every child on earth is born a naturally spiritual child. Through the lens of science, we can use a twin study to determine whether any human capacity is inborn versus environmentally formed. Height and weight, temperament, propensity for illness. So for instance, temperament, whether we're introverted or extroverted, whether we're tightly wound or laid back, is half innate, half environmentally formed. IQ, well, you were born a very bright baby. Your parents said, he's a smart baby. IQ is 2/3 innate, 1/3 environmentally formed. Capacity through which we experience spiritual life, and more specifically, a transcendent relationship, is inborn. It is innate. It is 1/3 innate, 2/3 environmentally formed, which means that nobody is left out. We all have this endowment, capacity for spiritual life, but 2/3 environmentally formed means that our culture, perhaps our faith tradition, our parents, and as we get older, the choices we make on our inner environment all weigh in to shape our spiritual awareness. There are even neurocorrelate circuits in the brain, which we have identified, that are inborn in every human being that sustain and support spiritual awareness, by which I don't mean biological determinism, but rather body, mind, and soul as we receive, perhaps as a docking station, transcendent inspiration, whether through creativity, whether through a visitation or in our prayer or meditation life. Transcendent relationship is something for which every single one of us is built. We are all endowed with universal pathways, circuits in our brain. Nobody is left out. Now, to your question, we're all naturally spiritual beings, but 1/3 innate, 2/3 environmentally formed. What's in our culture? What's in the 2/3? We looked all around the world. We looked in India, we looked in China, we looked in the US and said, okay, if spirituality is inborn, innate, if there are common genes all around the world through which spiritual perception is coded and unfolds in common circuits, universal circuits in the brain, then shouldn't there be phenotypes, experiential, phenomenological phenotypes found all around the world? And indeed, there are at least 5. A perception that love is a mutative force. It is different from happiness or other positive emotions.
Mutative being what, for people that don't know?
Transformative. When we love, things change, and they change at arm's length. When we love, things change equally at a distance. Love is like gravity or magnetism. It is a force that changes things. The second phenotype is that every single one of us is born to perceive that we are distinct and we are one. We are a point and we are a wave. We're all part of one family of life and yet exquisitely diverse. Love, oneness, a practice of transcendence through which we can reach the unit of love, through which we can perceive what is really there, which is a universe in which unit of love, like a golden thread, is built in to the fabric of reality. A moral code derived from our access to the deep transcendent reality. And fifth, service, love of neighbor, altruism. All 5 phenotypes are found in India, China, the States, with a distribution, right? Some of us feel it in a more pronounced way than others. Around the world, the more years of formal education we have, the more our natural spiritual awareness is cultivated. In India, in China, but uniquely in the United States, number of years of education are actually inversely associated with spiritual awareness, which is to say our mainstream education is foreclosing of natural spirituality. That's a travesty because we have educated children out of their birthright. We have deprived children of some of their most powerful forms of organic knowing, intuition, mystical awareness, transcendent relationship with ancestors. These are forms of knowing that are built into our brain. And body, mind, and soul are foundational to who we are. And yet, our education system is completely dry when it comes to nourishing the spiritual core.
Do you see that directly happening because we view education largely from the Western model of putting stuff in instead of drawing stuff out?
Educate, as you suggest, educate means to draw forward, right? The natural telos, the natural spirit of every single child. The second challenge in our education system, perhaps the most daunting challenge in our education system, is that we have deliberately disintegrated spiritual awareness from learning. In a misunderstanding of what spirituality really is, our education system, almost out of paranoia, has extricated spiritual inquiry. And that has been to the great detriment of an entire 2 generations of young people. What has filled the air and water of our classrooms and in time our boardrooms is radical materialism, latent radical materialism. It's only real if you can touch it, if it touches the 5 senses. What's wrong with radical materialism? To say that reality is only that which you can physically touch and measure is to disavow, to deauthorize our deepest seat of spiritual awareness, to nullify, null and void our transcendent awareness. Radical materialism is a huge problem. We have pollution in our air and water, and we have pollution in our culture. And it's so prevalent, just like pollutants in the air. Our culture is infused with radical materialism, like a frog in water. Where do I live? I'm so habituated to it, I don't even know. We live in radical materialism. What's wrong with radical materialism? It is making our young people sick. It is making our young children feel isolated and disconnected because a transcendent perception allows us to see and feel that we are loved, that we are guided, and that we are never alone. The naturally spiritual brain, the circuits with which we are all endowed, allow us to see that we are loved and held, the bonding network, that we are guided, a shift from dorsal to a ventral attention network, and that we are never alone, the parietal that puts in and out hard boundaries. When we silence this form of awareness, when we lay atrophy, the spiritual brain in the child, we have deprived that child of a sense of love and guidance. We've deprived that child with a form of perception and decision making, which allows for creativity, which allows for a deep goodness, and which allows for new knowledge.
I think of how these faculties, which are both innate and also need to be cultivated, have atrophied so largely across the world. And the good news, which you're here to bear, is that we can continue to build these up and rediscover and reconnect in this moment, in this present day.
Yes.
And that's what I love so much about your work, is because you do highlight how this disconnection really leads in so many different ways to the mental health crisis that we have, and that the good news is that we have, one, the awareness and the remembrance that we have these faculties and we have the hardwiring for this transcendent way of connecting, and that we can cultivate it.
We have the antidote within us. We have the antidote to the mental health crisis is already within us. A strong spiritual awareness is 80% protective against addiction, 70% protective against dangerous risk taking. And in a study of studies, a strong spiritual awareness, when shared, is 82% protective against completed suicide, which is the #1 killer of high school students right now. A high school student is more likely to die by suicide than by an auto accident or any form of illness. Suicide is the #1 killer of high school students, and yet we have the antidote, because a strong spirituality, when shared, when we share spiritual life, it is 82% protective against completed suicide, as shown in a meta-analysis, which means if I had a little pill and I said, this pill here is 82% protective against the #1 killer of high school students, who wouldn't give that to their child? What school wouldn't dispense that at lunch? And we throw down melatonin and all sorts of other supplements, and yet
They can be sold.
why is it then that the greatest antidote to the mental health crisis is left to lay fallow? And it's because our deep spiritual awareness has yet to be fully seen and realized. This is immediately before us. I'm tremendously hopeful, with empirically driven hope, that we can realize our natural spiritual nature, and we will solve the mental health crisis, and even more, we will usher in a new state of awareness that will solve our other problems and lead us to a new, more awakened society.